No one noticed the old woman at first. She was just another figure in the rain, another shadow blending into the chaos of the city. But Amara saw her. And with one small act of kindness, an act that should have been forgettable, she unknowingly set a storm into motion. Power does not always wear a crown, and fate does not always announce itself with a whisper. Sometimes, the most ordinary moments hold the weight of destiny. By the time the sun set that day, the woman Amara helped would change everything. Lies would unravel, names would be questioned, and those who thought themselves untouchable would fall. But there was one question no one dared to ask: who was the old woman really? The answer would shake the very foundation of everything they thought they knew. In the heart of Lagos, where the roads hummed with the ceaseless rhythm of life, where vendors called out their wares, and the scent of roasted corn mixed with the salty breeze from the nearby ocean, a young woman named Amara clutched her faded handbag as she hurried through the bustling streets. The early morning air carried a chill, and heavy rain poured down in thick sheets, turning the dusty roads into rivers of mud. It was only her second day at her new job as a cleaner in a prestigious office, and she could not afford to be late. The journey from her small room in Ajigono to Victoria Island was long, exhausting, and expensive, but it was a sacrifice she was willing to make for the sake of a better future. As she navigated the slippery sidewalks, her worn sandals barely protecting her feet from the cold puddles forming along the way, something caught her eye. An old woman stood alone in the rain, shivering, her clothes soaked through, her bare feet planted firmly on the wet ground. The woman had no umbrella, no coat, nothing to shield her from the relentless downpour. She looked lost, out of place in a city that never paused to ask questions. People walked past her without a glance, too busy with their own struggles. Amara hesitated for only a second before making her decision. Hi besties. I am so grateful for your support to Folktales by AJ. Where are you watching from? Let's dive in, but don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. Holding her small umbrella over the frail woman's head, she spoke gently. Mama, you will fall sick if you stay here like this. Where is your home? The old woman lifted her head, her weary eyes searching Amara's face before she sighed. My daughter, I have nowhere to go. I came from the village to find my son, but I have been lost since I arrived. No one will help me. Amara's heart ached. She knew what it felt like to struggle, to be ignored, to feel invisible in a city bursting with life. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the little money she had left for the day. Take this, Mama. Find somewhere to rest and get warm. The old woman shook her head, refusing. I cannot take what you need for yourself, my child. Amara thought for a moment before making a bold decision. Come with me. I am going to work. You can stay there until I finish my shift. We will find a way to help you. Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she whispered, May the gods bless you, my daughter. Together, they walked through the rain, sharing the small umbrella, two souls brought together by fate. By the time they arrived at Amara's workplace, she was already late. She could feel the disapproving stares of her coworkers as she led the old woman to a quiet corner near the janitor's closet. Quickly, she found a dry rag and helped the woman clean up as best as she could. Don't worry, Mama. I only have a few hours before my break. I will take you somewhere safe after that. The woman nodded, watching Amara as she got to work. She had so little, yet she gave so much. Hours passed, and when Amara finally stepped out for her break, she rushed to a nearby kiosk to buy some food. She counted her money carefully before selecting a small meal, just enough for two. But when she returned, something was wrong. The old woman was no longer there. Confused, Amara's eyes darted around the office. Her heart pounded as she stepped outside, hoping to find her safe and warm. And then she saw her. Standing near the office gates, looking defeated, the woman's frail shoulders slumped with sadness. Mama, What are you doing out here? Amara asked, rushing to her side. The old woman sighed heavily. My child, do not be angry. A woman came and told me to leave. She said I was dirty, that I did not belong here. Amara's stomach twisted in anger. Who would do this to you? The woman hesitated before speaking. She said she is the CEO's wife-to-be. Her name is Linda. Amara felt her blood boil. She knew Linda, the woman who strutted around the office like a queen, treating employees as if they were beneath her. Without a second thought, Amara stormed inside. Linda was still there, lounging in one of the executive chairs, her perfectly manicured nails gliding over her phone screen as if nothing had happened. Amara's voice rang through the office, firm and strong. Linda. The woman looked up lazily, a smirk playing on her lips. Oh, the little cleaner is back. What do you want? Amara's eyes burned with rage. How dare you treat my mother that way? What gives you the right to insult an elderly woman? Linda scoffed. Your mother. That filthy beggar. Oh please. I warned Richard not to hire you, but he didn't listen. And now, here you are, shouting at me. Amara's hands clenched into fists. You don't even know if my boss will marry you. I mean, look at you, so arrogant, so heartless. If you can treat a helpless old woman like that, I wonder how you will treat your future mother-in-law. Linda laughed mockingly. My mother-in-law is not poor and dirty like that old woman. She is classy and beautiful, just like me. She will love me when she meets me. Amara shook her head in disappointment. You are blind, Linda. You think beauty and money make a good wife. No. A good wife is kind, respectful, and loving. But you are cruel and selfish. You will never know what true love is. Linda's face darkened, her lips curling with rage. I promise you, you will regret talking to me like this. You will lose your job, Amara. Believe me, you will regret this. Amara let out a bitter laugh. I don't care. I don't want to work in a place where people like you exist. You insulted my mother, and now you think you can threaten me. Do your worst, Linda. I am taking my mother home, and I don't care about this stupid job anymore. With that, she turned on her heel and marched out of the office. Outside, the old woman was waiting, her eyes filled with silent pain. My child, you did not have to fight for me, she said softly. Amara smiled and took her hand. I had to, Mama. No one has the right to treat you that way. Let's go home. As they walked away, Amara felt a strange sense of peace. She had lost her job, but she had kept her dignity. That was something no one could take away from her. Back in the office, Linda fumed with anger. She picked up her phone and dialed Richard, the CEO. The moment he answered, she pretended to cry. Richard, something terrible just happened, she sobbed. His voice was immediately filled with concern. Linda, what's wrong? Are you okay? She sniffled dramatically. No, I'm not okay. Amara brought some of her street friends into the office. They insulted me, and they tried to beat me up. I was so scared. Richard was shocked. Amara did that. Yes. She even said she didn't care about her job and walked out like she owned the place. Richard sighed heavily. I'll handle it, Linda. Just go home and rest. Linda smirked as she ended the call. Let's see how you survive this, Amara, she whispered. Unbeknownst to Linda, her lies were about to unravel. And Amara's kindness to the old woman would lead to something neither of them could have ever imagined. Amara's feet ached as she walked through the rain-soaked streets with the old woman beside her, the rhythmic sounds of Lagos traffic filling the air. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She had lost her job, humiliated Linda in front of the entire office, and now, she was left with nothing but the little money in her pocket and the weight of an uncertain future. Yet, despite everything, she did not regret what she had done. No job was worth her dignity. No salary could make up for allowing an innocent old woman to be treated like trash. The old woman, who had introduced herself as Mama Grace, walked silently, gripping Amara's hand as if afraid she might vanish into the night. "My child," she said softly, "I do not know how to thank you. The kindness you have shown me today is something I will never forget." Amara forced a smile, trying to hide the turmoil inside her. "There is nothing to thank me for, Mama. What I did was what any decent person should do. It's just sad that people like Linda do not understand that." She sighed, glancing at the older woman's frail form. "Where exactly were you trying to go? You mentioned coming to Lagos to look for your son. Who is he? Maybe I can help you find him." Mama Grace hesitated for a moment, her face shadowed with emotion. "My son, he is a busy man. I am not even sure he wants to see me. But I needed to come. It has been many years since I last held him in my arms." Her voice wavered, filled with a sorrow Amara did not fully understand. "His name is Richard." Amara's breath hitched. "Richard," she repeated, her mind racing. "Richard, as in Richard Okafor, the CEO of Gilded Holdings." Mama Grace nodded slowly, and Amara nearly stumbled over her own feet. "Mama, Richard is my former boss." The revelation sent a jolt of shock through Amara's body. The old woman she had defended, the woman who had been thrown out by Linda, was the mother of the very man Linda was desperately trying to impress. Amara felt a sudden urge to laugh, not out of amusement, but at the sheer irony of it all. If only Linda had known the truth. If only she had realized that the woman she had insulted was the key to everything she desired. Mama Grace looked at her with tired eyes. "You know my son?" Amara nodded. "Yes, Mama. But I have never heard him mention you before. I thought his mother was abroad or..." She hesitated. "Gone." Mama Grace sighed deeply, a sadness settling over her like a heavy cloak. "That is what he was told. That I was gone. And in a way, I was." Amara could see the pain in the older woman's face, the weight of years spent apart from the child she had brought into the world. "I did not live by choice, my child. I was forced to." Her voice cracked. "Richard was taken from me when he was just a boy. His father, he was a powerful man, from a wealthy family. He did not think I was good enough for his son. He said I was nothing but a poor village woman and that I had no place in his life. One day, while Richard was at school, I was sent away, one never to return. They told him I had abandoned him. That I had chosen to leave. But I never did, Amara. I never did." Amara's heart ached at the injustice of it all. She had always known that the wealthy had their own rules, their own way of deciding who was worthy and who was not. But to tear a mother away from her child simply because she was poor, it made her stomach turn. "Mama, does Richard know the truth?" Mama Grace shook her head. "No. I have tried to reach him over the years, but every letter I sent was ignored. Every messenger turned away. I heard that he grew up to be a powerful man, just like his father wanted. But he does not know that his mother never stopped loving him. He does not know that I never stopped waiting for the day I could see him again." Amara swallowed hard, feeling an overwhelming sense of duty settle in her chest. "Then we have to tell him, Mama. He deserves to know the truth. And I will help you do it." The older woman looked at her with watery eyes. "But how, my child? You said yourself that you no longer work for him. How will we even get close?" Amara thought for a moment before an idea sparked in her mind. Linda, she said slowly. She is supposed to be Richard's fiancée. If we expose her for what she really is, it might force Richard to take a closer look at the people around him. And when he does, we will be there. He will have no choice but to listen. Mama Grace hesitated. But what if he does not believe me? Amara squeezed her hand. Then we will make him believe, Mama. No matter what it takes. The next day, Amara and Mama Grace found themselves outside the gates of Gilded Holdings once again. This time, however, Amara was not here to clean floors. She was here to reveal the truth. With her head held high, she walked past the guards, who barely gave her a second glance. She had memorized the shift change times from her days as an employee, and she knew exactly when to make her move. Inside, Linda was basking in her usual arrogance, chatting loudly with a few executives about her upcoming engagement party. Richard is completely smitten with me, she purred. And once we are married, I will make sure that only the right kind of people are allowed into his life. Amara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. And by right kind of people, you mean rich, heartless, and as cruel as you. The entire room went silent. Linda's eyes widened before narrowing into slits. You again. How dare you show your face here? Security. Before the guards could respond, Amara raised her voice. Before you throw me out, Richard should hear what I have to say. Because what I know will change everything. A murmur rippled through the room. Richard, who had been in his office, heard the commotion and stepped out, his brows furrowed in irritation. What is going on here? Linda immediately rushed to him, her voice dripping with false distress. Richard. This crazy girl won't leave. She is trying to cause trouble again. Amara ignored her and looked straight at Richard. Mr. Okafor, there is someone you need to meet. Someone you have been kept from your whole life. She turned and gestured towards the entrance. Mama Grace stepped forward, her hands trembling, her eyes brimming with tears. My son, she whispered. Richard's entire body went still. He stared at the woman before him, confusion flashing across his face. Who are you? Tears streamed down Mama Grace's face. Richard, my son. It's me. Your mother. A stunned silence filled the office. Richard's hands shook as he took a hesitant step forward. No, my mother is dead. She left me. His voice broke. She left me when I was just a boy. Amara's voice was firm. She never left you, Richard. She was taken from you. Lied to. Forced to stay away. But she never stopped loving you. And she never stopped trying to find you. Richard's words spun. Everything he had ever known, every truth he had built his life upon, was suddenly in question. He turned to Linda, whose face had gone pale. You knew about this, didn't you? Linda stammered. Richard, But he was already walking past her, toward the woman who had been denied to him for so long. His mother. The truth had finally been set free. And for Linda, the game was over. Richard stood frozen, his breath shallow as he stared at the frail woman before him. He had spent years building walls around the wound left by his mother's absence, believing the story his father had told him, believing that she had abandoned him, that she had chosen a life away from him. And yet, here she was, standing in front of him, trembling with emotions that mirrored his own. His mind was at war, torn between disbelief and an overwhelming need to know the truth. He wanted to ask so many questions, but the weight of them pressed against his chest, making it impossible to speak. Linda, who had been standing stiffly beside him, suddenly found her voice. Richard, please, she said hastily, gripping his arm. This woman is lying. She's just some old beggar that Amara picked up from the streets to embarrass you. Think about it, if she were really your mother, why would she show up now, after all these years? It doesn't make any sense. Amara's blood boiled at Linda's words. You are unbelievable, Linda. First, you insult this woman without knowing who she is, and now, when faced with the truth, you still choose to lie. If you had just treated her with kindness, none of this would be happening. She turned to Richard, her voice urgent. She is your mother, Richard. You have to listen to her. Richard's head throbbed with the weight of the moment. He looked at Mama Grace, at the deep sadness in her eyes, at the hope that trembled in her voice when she called him her son. His heart twisted painfully. Tell me something only my mother would know, he said finally, his voice hoarse. Mama Grace's lips quivered. When you were 5, you had a favorite toy, an old wooden car. It was missing a wheel, but you refused to let it go. You would tell everyone that it was not broken, that it was just different. I would sit beside you and listen as you made up stories about how the little car would still win races even though it was not perfect. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I remember one night, you had a nightmare, and you ran to me, clutching that car in your tiny hands. You told me that in your dream, the car had disappeared, and you were afraid that if it was gone, no one would ever remember it. And I told you that the things we love never truly leave us, even if they are no longer in our hands. They live in our hearts forever. Richard's knees nearly buckled. The memory crashed into him with full force. It was something no one else could have known. His father had never cared about such small, insignificant moments. That memory had belonged to him and his mother alone. He took an unsteady breath, his hands trembling. It's you, he whispered. It's really you. Linda saw the moment Richard's resolve cracked, and panic flared in her eyes. Richard, don't be foolish. This is a trick. Don't let these people manipulate you. You have no proof that she's telling the truth. Richard turned to Linda slowly, his gaze colder than she had ever seen it. Enough, Linda. This is my mother. His voice was firm now, filled with something Linda had never heard directed at her before, disappointment. And you? He shook his head, his jaw tightening. You insulted her. You called her a beggar. You showed your true colors today, and I see you now for who you really are. Linda's face paled. Richard, no. You don't mean that. I was only trying to protect you. You can't trust someone who just appeared out of nowhere. And yet, I trusted you, Richard said, his voice quiet but lethal. And that was my mistake. He turned to the gathered employees, his decision clear. Linda, leave this office. You are no longer welcome here. And as for our engagement, consider it over. Linda gasped as if she had been slapped. Richard, you can't do this. After everything we've built together. Richard's face hardened. Built. I was the only one building. You were simply waiting to take ownership of something you had no part in creating. He gestured to the security guards. Escort her out. Linda's mouth opened and closed, her shock rendering her speechless. She turned to the employees around her, expecting someone, anyone, to defend her. But there was only silence. No one would save her now. As the guards moved toward her, she let out a bitter laugh, her eyes filled with fury. Fine. I don't need you, Richard. You think you've won, but you haven't seen the last of me. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the office, her expensive heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. The moment the doors closed behind her, a collective breath seemed to release in the office. Richard, however, had no time to process Linda's departure. He turned back to Mama Grace, his throat tightening with emotions he had spent a lifetime suppressing. Why didn't you come for me? He asked, his voice raw. All these years, I thought you didn't want me. I thought you abandoned me. Mama Grace sobbed softly. Oh, my son. I never abandoned you. I was taken away. Your father and his family made sure I could not reach you. They told me that if I ever tried to return, they would ruin my life and yours. I was powerless against them. She reached out, hesitating before touching his face, as if afraid he would vanish. But I never stopped loving you. Never. Richard inhaled sharply, struggling to hold back his own tears. He had spent his whole life believing a lie. And now, standing in front of the woman who had loved him all along, he felt both shattered and whole at the same time. I lost so much time, he whispered. Mama Grace smiled through her tears. But we have time now. Amara, who had remained silent, wiped away her own tears. She had only wanted to help a stranger, but in doing so, she had reunited a mother and son. Her heart swelled with emotion as she watched Richard pull Mama Grace into a tight embrace, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. After several long moments, Richard pulled away and turned to Amara. You made this happen. If you hadn't helped her, I might have never known the truth. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Amara smiled. You don't owe me anything, sir. I only did what was right. Richard shook his head. No, Amara. What you did was extraordinary. And people like you deserve to be recognized. He looked around the office, then back at her. How would you like to return to work here, but not as a cleaner? I think we have a place for someone with your courage and integrity. Amara's eyes widened in shock. Are you serious? Richard chuckled. Very. You stood up to injustice, you helped someone in need, and you never backed down from what you believed was right. Those are qualities I want in my company. Amara blinked back tears. I would be honored. The office erupted into quiet applause as the employees, who had all witnessed Amara's bravery, smiled in approval. For the first time in a long time, Amara felt seen, not as a struggling cleaner, but as someone who mattered. As she stepped forward to shake Richard's hand, she glanced at Mama Grace, who smiled at her with warmth and gratitude. In that moment, Amara knew that kindness had changed everything. And nothing would ever be the same again. The sun cast golden rays over Lagos, illuminating the skyscrapers and the busy streets that pulsed with life. For Amara, everything had changed in the span of just a few days. She had walked into Gilded Holdings as a simple cleaner, but now, thanks to a single act of kindness, she was about to start a new chapter in her life. Standing in front of the towering building once more, she took a deep breath, clutching her bag tightly. It felt surreal to be back, not as an overlooked worker scrubbing floors, but as someone who had earned the CEO's respect. Richard had personally offered her a position within the company, and today would be her first day. She had not even asked about the role, she simply trusted that whatever it was an opportunity she would cherish. Mama Grace walked beside her, smiling warmly. My daughter, are you ready for this new journey? Amara exhaled and nodded. I think so, Mama. I just hope I can prove myself. Mama Grace squeezed her hand. You have already proven yourself, my dear. Your kindness changed my life, and now, your own life is changing because of it. Inside the building, Richard was waiting for them. He was dressed sharply in a navy blue suit, but there was a warmth in his eyes that had not been there before. Ever since learning the truth about his mother, he had seemed like a man reborn, lighter, freer. Amara, he greeted. Welcome back. She smiled nervously. Thank you, sir. I still can't believe all of this is happening. Richard chuckled. Believe it. You're here because you deserve to be. Now, let's get you settled. Amara followed him into his office, where a contract lay waiting on his desk. She hesitated before picking it up, scanning the words carefully. Her eyes widened as she read the title of the position, Executive Assistant to the CEO. She looked up at Richard in shock. Sir, this is too much. I don't have experience for such a role. Richard leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. You underestimate yourself, Amara. You have courage, intelligence, and integrity, things that can't always be taught. I don't need someone with years of experience, I need someone I can trust. And you've already proven that I can trust you more than most. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. I don't know what to say. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Richard smiled. I know you won't. Now, let's get started. For the first few days, Amara focused on learning the ropes of her new position. She was given a small office space right outside Richard's, and the transition from being invisible to being respected was overwhelming. At first, some employees whispered behind her back, questioning how a former cleaner had been given such a high-ranking position. But Amara ignored them. She worked twice as hard as anyone else, staying late to study company reports, learning about the business world, and ensuring that she was worthy of the trust Richard had placed in her. Despite the positive changes, one shadow still loomed over everything, Linda. No one had seen or heard from her since she had been thrown out of the office, but Amara could not shake the feeling that Linda was not the type to disappear quietly. And she was right. One evening, as Amara left work, she felt a chill run down her spine. The streetlights flickered as she stepped outside, and she heard footsteps behind her. When she turned, Linda was standing there, her arms crossed, her face twisted with rage. You think you've won, don't you? Linda spat. Amara took a steady breath, refusing to be intimidated. What do you want, Linda? Linda laughed bitterly. I want what's mine. Richard was supposed to be mine. That position, his life, was supposed to belong to me. And then you came along and ruined everything. Her eyes darkened. You think you're special because you helped an old woman. Because you got lucky. You're nothing, Amara. Nothing. Amara's heart pounded, but she held her ground. I didn't take anything from you, Linda. You lost Richard because of your own cruelty. You lost his respect because you showed him who you truly are. That was your doing, not mine. Linda's face twisted with fury. You think this is over? You have no idea who you're messing with. Before Amara could respond, Linda turned on her heel and disappeared into the night. Amara shivered, knowing that this would not be the last she heard from her. The next morning, the consequences of Linda's anger arrived. A scandalous article had been published online, filled with lies about Amara. It painted her as a manipulative woman who had seduced her way into Richard's life, claiming that she had used his mother to gain sympathy and power. The words were vile, and Amara felt her stomach drop as she read them. The office was buzzing with gossip by the time she arrived. Whispers followed her everywhere. Some employees looked at her with pity, others with suspicion. She wanted to disappear. Richard stormed into the office, his face set in a dark expression. He threw the printed article onto his desk. Linda, he said simply. Amara nodded, her throat tight. She's trying to destroy me. Richard exhaled sharply. That's not going to happen. I'll have my legal team handle this immediately. We'll find a way to shut this down. Amara shook her head. It won't be enough. People love gossip, and Linda knows that. Even if you clear my name legally, the damage is already done. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then what do you suggest? Amara took a deep breath. We tell the truth. Publicly. Let the world know exactly what happened, how I met Mama Grace, how you discovered the truth, and how Linda was the one lying all along. If we control the narrative, she loses her power. Richard leaned back, nodding slowly. You're right. We take control of the story. Within hours, a press conference was arranged. The media gathered at Gilded Holdings, eager to hear what the CEO had to say about the rumors. Richard stood before them with Amara at his side, his mother seated beside him. There have been lies spread about Amara, a woman who has done nothing but show kindness where others showed cruelty, Richard began. Let me make one thing clear, she did not manipulate anyone. She did not seek power. What she did was reunite a mother and son who had been torn apart by lies for years. And I will forever be grateful to her for that. Mama Grace spoke next, her voice soft but powerful. I was lost and forgotten, left behind by those who thought I did not matter. But Amara saw me. She helped me when no one else would. She is not the woman these rumors paint her to be, she is the reason I have my son back. And for that, she is family to me. The press erupted with questions, but the truth had already been cemented. The lies Linda had spread had no more power. Amara's name had been cleared, and more importantly, she had gained something even more valuable, respect, love, and a new family. As they walked away from the cameras, Richard turned to Amara. Are you ready to move forward? Amara smiled. I've never been more ready. As the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Amara knew that her life had changed forever. And for the first time in a long time, she was truly at peace. The air in Lagos felt lighter as the storm of rumors and lies that Linda had unleashed began to dissipate. Amara had thought that surviving the scandal would be the hardest part of her journey, but she was wrong. As she sat at her new desk inside Gilded Holdings, she realized that proving herself in her new role would be the true test. Being Richard's executive assistant was nothing like cleaning floors. Every day brought new challenges, and she had to learn quickly. But if life had taught her anything, it was that she was more than capable of adapting. She had already proven that she could handle storms, now it was time to build something stronger in their aftermath. Richard had been more supportive than she ever expected. He was no longer just her boss, he had become a friend, someone who genuinely respected her opinions. He often called her into meetings, asked for her thoughts on business matters, and trusted her with responsibilities she never imagined handling. The other employees had begun to see her differently too. At first, many had doubted her abilities, whispering that she was only there because of the scandal. But as weeks passed, her dedication and hard work silenced even the harshest critics. Mama Grace had also flourished since reuniting with her son. Richard had moved her into a beautiful home in a quiet part of the city, ensuring she would never suffer again. She spent her days cooking, visiting the local market, and even taking up a small role in a charity organization that helped widows. I spent too many years waiting, she told Amara one afternoon over a bowl of steaming jollof rice. Now, I want to give back. I want to make sure no other mother suffers the way I did. Despite all the good that had come out of their journey, there was still one loose end, Linda. She had disappeared after Richard publicly denounced her, but Amara had a feeling she wasn't truly gone. People like Linda didn't accept defeat easily. And she was right. One evening, Richard received an urgent message. His legal team had intercepted a business deal that was about to cost Gilded Holdings millions. At first, they thought it was just a bad investment, but as they dug deeper, they discovered the truth. Linda had been working in the shadows, trying to sabotage the company. She had leaked false financial reports, manipulated stock information, and even tried to forge documents that would lead to Richard losing his position as CEO. If the plan had worked, she would have been able to take control of the company alongside a group of corrupt investors. Amara sat in Richard's office as he reviewed the evidence, his jaw clenched tightly. She's more dangerous than I thought, he muttered. This isn't just revenge, she wants complete destruction. Amara leaned forward. We need to stop her before she does more damage. If she's willing to go this far, who knows what else she's planning. Richard nodded. We'll take this to the authorities. I won't let her ruin everything I've built. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal action. With Richard's powerful legal team and undeniable evidence, Linda's plans crumbled. She was arrested and charged with fraud, conspiracy, and multiple counts of financial tampering. When the news broke, it sent shockwaves through the business world. The woman who had once been poised to become the wife of one of Lagos' most eligible bachelors was now facing years behind bars. As Richard and Amara watched the news reports, a sense of finality settled between them. It's over, Richard said quietly. She won't be able to hurt anyone again. Amara exhaled deeply. Good. She caused enough damage. Now it's time to focus on the future. And focus on the future they did. With Linda gone, Gilded Holdings flourished under Richard's leadership. The scandal had actually strengthened the company's reputation. People admired the way Richard had stood for the truth. Investors poured in, employees felt more secure, and the company entered one of its most successful phases in years. As for Amara, her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined. She had gone from being an invisible cleaner to a respected woman in the corporate world. And more importantly, she had built relationships that would last a lifetime. Mama Grace had become like a second mother to her, always offering wisdom and warmth. And Richard had become someone she trusted deeply. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park after work, Richard turned to her with a thoughtful expression. Amara, have you ever thought about what you truly want in life? Beyond work, beyond responsibilities, what makes you happy? Amara looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling like tiny lanterns. I never had the luxury of dreaming big before. My goal was always just to survive. But now, I want to live. I want to help people, just like I helped Mama Grace. I want to make a difference. Richard smiled. You already have, Amara. More than you know. A comfortable silence stretched between them before Richard spoke again, his voice softer this time. I never told you this, but meeting you changed my life. You reminded me of what truly matters, not power, not wealth, but people. You helped me see the truth about my mother, about Linda, about myself. And I will always be grateful for that. Amara felt a warmth spread through her chest. I think we both helped each other, Richard. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. It was not a grand confession, not an over-the-top declaration of love. But it was something real, something built on mutual respect and trust. And for Amara, that was more valuable than anything else. As they walked hand in hand, Amara realized just how much her life had changed. She had started as a poor cleaner, struggling to find her place in the world. But through kindness, courage, and resilience, she had rewritten her story. She had found a family, a purpose, and maybe, just maybe, love. And in the end, that was the greatest triumph of all. Thank you besties for watching till the end. What do you think of this story, and did it remind you of anyone? Please share in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to Folktales by IJ, so we can keep bringing you inspiring African folktale stories on Folktales by IJ.